I'm going to talk about graphing piecewise functions on the TI-84 calculators. The newer calculators, if you've got one of the newer TI-84 plus CE calculators, it's actually an option. If I turn it on, and then if I go to the y equals, I can go to my math, and if I go down, I actually have the option to graph a piecewise function. There it is. And I can say how many pieces do I want and all that other good stuff. But I'm going to use the older calculator because we can actually do it on the older calculators as well. So I'm going to use an older model, TI-84. Here it is. And we can do piecewise functions on this. So if we're going to graph a piecewise function, we need to have a piecewise function. So let's see, what should we start with? How about the following function? Y is f of x is piecewise defined as x squared plus 2 when x's are less than or equal to -1, and the absolute value of x when x's are less than or equal to 2 and greater than -1, and -x plus 1 when x's are greater than 2. So I'm going to deal with 3 pieces here. The same thing you could do with 4 pieces, 2 pieces, however many you want. When we enter these in, it's all about how you enter these in here. So if I go to the y equals, I'm going to put it in as 3 different functions. I'm going to use y1, y2, and y3. In y1, I'm going to put the function x squared plus 2. So x squared plus 2. Now, how do I get it to graph just this part right here? So here's the trick of it. I'm going to use the dividing button, and then I want to put in this condition right here. How do I do that? Open parentheses, x, my variable button, less than or equal to -1. Where is that? Well, that's under the test button here. So second math, and here's all my symbols. I want less than or equal to. So I go down to less than or equal to, -1, make sure you're using the negative button, not the minus operation, -1, and close parentheses. So this is telling the calculator to graph this, the parabola, x squared plus 2, but only for x's less than or equal to -1. Now I'm going to put the next piece of the function in, absolute value. Where's absolute value? Math, and then if I go over to numbers, there's absolute value. Some of the older calculators put ABS and then open and close parentheses. This one actually has the absolute value bars. I'm going to put X in here, get outside of the absolute value bars. But I only want this piece right here. So again, divided by, and I'm going to put these conditions in. Open parentheses. Now I can't write a compound inequality like this. I have to do it with x's first. So I'm going to write x's greater than -1. So again, I'm going to go to the test. I'm going to find greater than -1. But I also want them to be less than 2. So how do I do that? Again, I'm going to go to the test button, second math. This time I'm going to go over to logic and put in the word and. So I'm telling it that I want that, the absolute value of x, but only when x's are greater than -1 and x is less than or equal to -2. So the variable button x, go to my test, less than or equal to, right here, +2, close parentheses. So this is going to say absolute value of x, but only where x's are greater than -1 and less than or equal to 2. Now the third piece of this is -x plus 1. I want this condition, so divided by, open parentheses, I want x greater than 2. There's my variable button x. Second math, which is my test button, greater than 2, and then close parentheses. So here it is. There it is. You can pause and take a closer look at the syntax here and how to write this. I'm going to go ahead and graph it now. I'm going to go to my zoom. I'm going to go to my standard viewing window, -10 to 10 on the x's, -10 to 10 on the y's, hit enter. And here's my piecewise function. The first part, the parabola. The second part, the absolute value. And then the third part, the line. And there it is. With the signs, be careful on the signs, especially if you're going to evaluate it later. If you're going to evaluate this function at -1, you want to make sure the calculator is evaluating it in this function where it's less than or equal to -1, and not in this function where it's only greater than -1. All right, let's take a look at another one. So here's another example. In this one, y is going to be a function of x, piecewise defined as, we'll make it the constant line 4 when x's are less than or equal to negative 3. We'll make it the rational function 1 over x when x's are greater than negative 3 but less than or equal to 1, and the negative square root of x when x's are greater than 1. So here's another piecewise function, nothing too crazy in here, it should be fairly easy. Go to my y equals. I'm just going to clear everything out and start from scratch here. Go back up here. All right, so 4, the constant 4. Here's the condition I want. So again, divided by, open parentheses. I want x's less than or equal to negative 3. X, and go to my test, which is second math, less than or equal to negative 3. And again, make sure you're using the negative button down here, not the minus operation. Close parentheses. And then 1 over x. So I'm going to have 1 divided by x. Now notice I'm going to put the division in here as well. I could put that in parentheses, but I don't need to because I'm going to have the parentheses afterwards. So divided by, open parentheses. Here I want this part, x is greater than negative 3. So x, go to my test, greater than negative 3. And, so here's where I need to go to my testing, go over to the logic words, and I want to use the word and here. X is less than or equal to 1. X, go to the test, less than or equal to 1, close parentheses. And then finally, negative square root of x. Again, make sure you're using the negative, not the minus operation. Negative square root of x. I'm going to use the over arrow to get out of the square root. There we go. Divided by, and then here's where I'm going to put in the condition. X is greater than 1. So go to the math. Greater than 1. Close parentheses. Oh, I didn't put the parentheses in there. Oh, make sure you put the parentheses in there. So I'm going to go to Shift Delete, which inserts something. Open parentheses, and there we go. Now now the condition is in parentheses. There we go. So now if I hit graph, I know it's already at a standard viewing window. If I hit graph, there's the line 4. Here comes the rational function 1 over x, but only between negative 3 and 1. And there is the square root function, the negative square root function, reflected over the x-axis. So you can slow it down and take a look at the syntax. It's all about the dividing and then putting your conditions for x's in the parentheses. And the x's always come first. X greater than and x less than. Good luck. Don't be afraid to play around with it and see what happens.